Hello, everyone. My name is Sheaya. For those who don't know me, I have a grief support group called Grief Resilience, and this is a spiritually minded grief support group. And today I have with me Judy Lipson. She's a professional therapist, licensed therapist, and we wanted to just come together today to talk about sensitives and grief. This is a topic that I don't hear a lot about. I felt like a little bit of a crazy person for a little while, but once I started to learn more and hear that there's a lot of people who experience this kind of stuff and that I wasn't alone, I became more comfortable and I was able to find tools and resources that would help me live. I guess the best way to put it is live more presently and use these things for the greater good instead of letting them weigh me down. And so, Judy, I thought I'd let you introduce yourself a little bit, maybe talk about what sensitives are for those who don't know.
Hi, I'm Judy Lipson. As Sheaya said, I'm a licensed professional counselor. I've had a private practice that I call Spiral Wisdom since 2002. Before that, I was an educator, special educator, so I've been working with lots of kids and adults on all kinds of things. Through working with students and learning about myself, I began to identify this group of people that I call sensitives. I don't think that concept is brand new to me, but the way I describe it is think about the five senses, and people who are sensitives tend to be highly attuned to one or more of the five senses. So, like visually, you might come into a space and just see everything that there is. You can't help yourself. Auditorily, you're hearing sounds that either other people don't mind, it doesn't bother them, or you might even be hearing sounds that other people can't hear. Taste, this is the kind of thing that typically only parents know about, but people who don't particularly like a certain taste or texture. Smells. And then the last one is tactile, or how it feels against your body, like the people who don't like certain tags on clothing or tight waistbands and so forth. So as I began to meet more and more children and adults and recognize myself as a sensitive, I realized that the majority of sensitives also are highly attuned to the awareness of energy and empathy. So think people who are sympathy is like, oh my goodness, I feel so bad for you. Empathy is, oh my goodness, I can imagine what that must be like. And an empath feels it within their own body. And as you and I were talking a little bit before we had a chance to do this today, Sheaya, we talked a little bit about what it can be like to be an empath and feel other people's feelings. And when you're in the midst of having your own big, intense stuff, that can feel pretty overwhelming.
Yeah, that's like that. And I wanted to share part of this in my story. So I'm going to rewind and come back to that for sure. But like that was one of my biggest struggles in grief. I guess let me back up if that's cool. I wanted to share like how I even became aware of this. And like I would say before my mom's sudden death, I was not really paying attention to sounds or sight. Like I was kind of just like living my life and nothing really affected me. I never really paid too much attention to like my surroundings, what was in the room. And I don't know why that was. Maybe it just always was that way. Maybe I was just like a little selfish in my head. I have no idea why I was that way. But I kind of just didn't pay attention to much of anything, really. And so after my mom had transitioned, that's the word I like to use, I suddenly like food seemed really intense. Like I would eat cinnamon and like I don't like cinnamon anymore. It's just too much for me. And there's like I love food now. I feel like before I used to eat to live, like whatever, just feed me so my stomach stops growling. And now it's like I want something good. I want something that tastes good and that I can enjoy. But at first, like especially my early grief, eating was difficult because it felt like nothing tasted good and everything was like extreme in flavor, if that makes sense at all. And then I started to notice things, super sensitive. Like I could walk in and my grandparents, I would feel their grief. And so then my grief like felt like it doubled, and like I would have an anxiety attack and end up in the bathtub and like couldn't move. And it just felt like it awoke me. Like that awakened is like the only word that I could describe, because everything went from like fine, great, going through the motions. I was chasing this career that I really wanted, to then like everything was so intense that I didn't know how to be a human. Like I didn't know how to function. So like that's really what really was difficult for me in grief, was kind of transitioning to being, I kind of wanted to run away from everything. Can I ignore this till it all goes away? But that didn't really work. And I tried hibernating, isolating myself so that I didn't have to deal with all of those things. But with the empathic thing, I guess, now it's when I hear somebody I know lost someone they love, like I feel it in my chest.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the weight is there. Like my stomach does this knots thing now. And it's like I kind of like get a little bit of anxiety because I know exactly how they feel, and I'm like feeling it for them.
Right.
I don't always know the right things to say, and I'm not like a perfect grief friend, but I think just being aware of this kind of stuff and being sensitive, it's a different kind of world. And it only happened to me because of grief.
Well, I love how you described you had an awakening.
Yeah.
And many of us who are intuitive, many of us who are sensitives, many of us who are, um, I don't know what other words to use. We don't need to anyway. It's an awakening. And some people, it starts out as in children, as children, and we are awakened and we never go back to sleep. And some people don't have their awakening till later. And it does seem that an awakening can have a physiologic aspect. You do feel it in your body, where certain things are going to impact you and affect you differently than they did before. And that's what you describe. And I appreciate that you said there was a part of you that wanted to just kind of hibernate, make it go away, because it is so big. And to have an awakening at the same time that you're having such another big event like grief, can feel like a whole lot. But even if you weren't, it can feel like, okay, no more, let's just set that aside. But at an intuitive, knowing level, it sounds like you knew you had to let it come through, let you come through to be who you really are.
I don't think I realized that at first. I think I just got sick of fighting it. Really, I'm just like, I mean, I can't change it. I might as well roll with it at this point.
Awesome. Yeah.
I think it was more of a surrender than like a knowing. But yeah, I still do get overwhelmed at times where it's like people will call me and tell me that, their friend has died, and it's like I'm in the middle of working, then I can't focus on my work, and it's like sometimes I'm just like, what tool can I use? Like, what do I need right now? Because I still have to like function and be a person, and these things disrupt me pretty frequently. So like that's one thing I wanted to pick your brain about today, is like how can we cope with this stuff when it's feeling like it's overwhelming, or it's a lot to handle.
Yeah. And I suppose you could be talking about your own grief, which you've done some amazing work on it, but grief is a lifelong experience to some degree.
Yeah.
But it's also the fact that as an empath, you are picking up other people's thoughts, feelings, emotions on a regular basis, the energy of them. And as an empath, we bring in the feelings of others into ourselves, and then it has to muddle in there with all of our own stuff, and it can feel pretty overwhelming. So there are some tools that you can use. So one of the tools is it's basically a cognitive one. It's a thinking one. It's the recognition that as a healer, because each one of us has some aspect that we see ourselves as healers. Some of us came into this body, came into this life truly to be a healer of sorts, whether we are a medical person or a massage therapist or an energy healer of some kind, or we're the person who you see at the grocery store who gives you just the warmest smile and you just feel so good. That's still healing. So we who have come in as healers also tend to come in as empaths. And so the first thing is to cognitively realize that I most of us who think we're supposed to be healers, we're oftentimes, and I don't know if you or the other people that are listening and follow you potentially believe in past lives. But the idea is that some of us were shamans at another time. And the shaman is just a fancy name for the healer of the village. Mm-hmm. But the way a shaman does healing is to bring in, this is how the older shamans did in the other times.
Sorry. My dog's, hey guys, come here, babies. Really, no, I'm so sorry. They're getting excited about the shamans.
Apparently, they're like, me. Yeah. So the shaman would take in whatever illness, disease, or emotional disruption was going on with people. They would bring it into their own body, their own being. They would neutralize it, transmute it, and give it back. So the thing is that we who are walking this earth today, we don't have training in shamanism.
Yeah.
If you were a trained shaman, you wouldn't be sitting here listening and going, oh, Judy, what have you got to say about this one? You'd be like, I got this down. So the first thing is to realize that we have not had the training as a shaman, and these bodies are not designed to take it in, transmute it, and give it back. So the first step is it's not my job to take in your stuff, your worries, your fears, your grief, your sadness, and help fix it for you. Mm-hmm. My job, my role, any of our roles, is to support the other person as they do their own work. So that's the first step, is just realizing I don't have to take it all in. The second idea is that in order to know what another person needs and how you need to respond, we don't need this much information. I'm not sure where my hands are here, but we only need this much. Okay? So as empaths, we tend to fill the whole body bucket with somebody's emotion and feelings, and then we get overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. So think in terms of, it's not my job, and I only need this much information. If you go to someplace and you see a friend of yours, or you see a person in the store that you don't even know, and you sense that they are in a bad place, you don't need a lot of information to know that you just want to walk by and give them a smile. Maybe if it's someone you know, say, hey, how you doing? Is there something I can do to help? To the other side, if you go to a place and you see somebody and you're like, this is not somebody I need to be around, I need to hightail it out of here for safety, you don't need this much information. You don't need to stick around for an hour and find out more. You just need that little bit of information and respond. Okay. So that's kind of at the cognitive level. But what I find is that most empaths, that's not enough. To know, to think that is not usually enough to make it so.
Yeah.
So energetically, one of the things to do is to identify where in your body you access all that information. Where do you absorb the energy? And do you know where it is for you, Sheaya?
Is it solar plexus, the one that's like right here? I know you can't really see it well. Yeah, through my solar plexus and like feelings in my stomach.
Right.
And depending on when it's grief related, it's always heavy on my chest. But if it's anything else related, it's usually solar plexus.
That's how I hear other people describe it too. Mm-hmm. That it's usually kind of in the area of the gut, high or low. Some people tell me they feel it up here at their heart. I've had a few people tell me they feel it up at their head. I'm not here to say, no, that's not true, even though the majority of people seem to describe it lower. That's your truth. Mm-hmm. So what I invite everybody to do, and you can try this as well. And usually when I do this as an exercise, I use the area at my solar plexus and abdomen. But I have no idea how I'd back up far enough or stand up that you'd be able to see that. So I'm going to use the area at my chest.
Yeah.
So think in terms of like a dolphin or a whale that has a blowhole that opens and closes.
Like that?
Yeah. And if you are visible at your solar plexus, abdomen, maybe you would do it down there.
Okay.
Um, and so imagine then that it's hard to do this.
Yeah.
Um, maybe I do need to try and do this. Here. Okay, here we go. So
Oh,
you don't need to take this much space.
right.
You only need this much.
Okay.
So play with it. Some people need to close their eyes and really focus. Am I okay lined up still?
Right. Perfect.
Okay. So, um, so you may want to close your eyes and really think about it. But I just invite play. Play with the idea of taking that space, that blowhole. Now, some people prefer to think of it as like the crosshairs of a cloth or a grid,
Yeah.
and you can make it smaller in a tighter weave. You can make it a larger weave. Some people use color, like a deeper red is um, going to keep a lot of that energy from coming in. But if you use a softer tone like a pink, it's more translucent and allows it in. So you just play with where does it feel right. I've not met anyone yet who likes to have it closed down completely. That does not seem to be what feels comfortable for anybody, but you just play with that idea of opening and closing. So that's like one idea there. Thoughts on that or questions?
Yeah, and I do want to invite anyone, if you have questions on being sensitive in grief overall, let us know what your questions are. If you watch the replay of this video, I'll go back and answer to the best of my ability, and like we can pull in Judy if we have like big
Yeah,
questions.
absolutely.
Yeah. But with this, so then what am I imagining with this hole? Am I imagining
So,
pushing it back out? Am I imagining
so most of us as empaths are used to having this great big
just
volume.
okay, just closing it in general to a
Yeah.
smaller
Closing it to a smaller, and as you're closing it to a smaller, feel what it feels like.
okay.
There's a place where it feels like, oh, that feels pretty good. And then it's like, oh, that's feeling too icky. Then you open it back up again and just play with the sensation of what that feels like so that you realize that, oh, I do have a sense. And then in the future, when you are in a challenging situation, let's say you know you're going to see somebody, or you walk into a room and the energy, the emotions are so strong. Now, guys, this doesn't have to just be about grief.
Mhm.
It can be when you are in the environment of people with any kind of intense emotion that makes you uncomfortable. It can be anger, it can be worry and fear. People who are just exuberantly happy, we don't feel like we want to close that down. We
Yeah.
don't have to close that down. It's those challenging emotions that become challenging for us.
Yeah.
And then you just play with what's the space. And also, it's the recognition of, oh, I actually get to control this to a degree.
Mhm.
And you're right, Sheaya, when you're dealing with a lot of intense grief on your own, you just don't have a lot of bandwidth to take much more in.
Yeah.
So anything, when we talk about sensitives, we're talking about sensory input. And anytime you have sensory input, there's only so much the body can withstand, can handle. And some people have a larger bandwidth than others. And you might have this awesomely huge bandwidth until you're involved in something major, and then your bandwidth shrinks down. You may be a super sensitive, and in which case your bandwidth already is pretty limited for comfort level, and then you add your own and other people's stuff, and it's like, oh boy.
Yeah. I can imagine. I think, in my early grief, it was just too much, and as I did the work on myself and I dealt with my own grief, then definitely could open it up a little bit more because I was in a different place. But I want to go back to this shaman stuff that you were talking about.
Okay.
Help it. So I think it's so interesting that like I don't know, just the whole thing of like taking it in and then giving it back. And like one thing that I've tried a couple times, I don't know why I did it, just intuitively thought the words to me that came to me were return to sender with love. So like when I brought it in, I could feel it mixing up. So I just like imagined, okay, lots of white light, mixing it up, happy. And then I just imagine returning to sender with love,
I love that.
pushing it back. But I like the idea of being able to like just close it a little bit to begin with.
Well,
Like,
so I can really see people using a blend of that, where yeah, you can minimize the amount that's coming in, which allows you to be a little bit more comfortable. And then you can also return it to the person. It's theirs. We don't serve a person by taking their stuff. We really don't.
I'm not convinced that taking their stuff even lightens their load. I'm not
It does not.
convinced. Okay, so there's no point in carrying it for them because it doesn't help them in any way.
Exactly. Yeah, because truly it doesn't help the other person. They may feel supported, but it doesn't fix it.
But I can still listen and make them feel supported without actually carrying their emotions.
Yes.
So,
And that's
yeah.
how you support and fix and help them, not fix, but help them, is by listening and helping and supporting them so they know that they're not alone.
Love it.
And I
So,
love return with love.
yeah, return with love. At least give them some love back.
Yeah.
If there's any questions about being empathic, sensitive, dealing with grief, let us know. We have a couple people watching, so if they have any questions, I want to catch it for them. So I guess the other part of this for me and my grief was going back to like, I guess like when I started to like get these intuitive nudges. And maybe this is not as much sensitives and griefs. I don't know if I'm going off topic here, but I started to get these intuitive nudges and I was really afraid of them, really just terrified because I didn't know. And like this had never really happened to me before. And like connecting to what I believe being the power greater than myself, that I had never done that before was like terrifying. Like, especially like all these Hollywood movies. I thought,
Exactly.
you know, like all of this stuff. So like I would love to chat about that if it's not too far off.
Sure. Yeah. So, the problem is in our society, we don't talk about this very much.
Mhm.
One of the really exciting things that I found is you can find more and more books, and there are more movies. When The Sixth Sense came out, with its subtitle, I See Dead People, I just thought that was the awesomest thing because we're starting to talk about it in mainstream media. At least if you go see the movie, not everything was, based on other people. I don't know. Maybe it's not all based on other people's truths. But there were
Right.
still aspects, even in that cool movie, of,
But I
the
was happy.
fearful part.
Yeah, there was no evil spirits taking over your body in that movie. Like,
Right. Yeah.
you
But
know.
it still used people's fears to be thinking about it and to watch this movie. There were still the fear pieces. And that's the problem with our society, is that we don't talk about these things. We don't teach these things. That's part of the mission that I'm on and the work that I do, is having the opportunity to work with people one-on-one, regardless of age. And it is such a blast to work with these little kids who are 5, 6, 8, 12, and older, who already are very intuitive and at peace with it.
I love it.
And
They're
I
gonna
do
have the
too.
same struggle that I had. Like,
Yeah. And I went through the same thing, Sheaya, and look how much younger than me that you are. And it's taken me longer in my journey to come to peace with the whole thing. In our society, unfortunately, and we still see it today, there's still that belief that different is bad.
Mhm.
And when we can get away from different is bad, it will help so many things. Because when you started to have those intuitive openings and awarenesses, you're like, oh my gosh, this is so different. Different. Oh, different equals bad, not good. And then fear comes in. But it wasn't that at all. Different was just different. Different initially can feel uncomfortable, but really uncomfortable oftentimes is just unfamiliar.
Yeah.
And it seems like the loss of your mom and the subsequent grief became your almost like an initiating experience. Not everyone who loses someone close to them is going to all of a sudden open to their own awakening of who they are and their intuitive self and having energy awareness or intuition or any of those things. And Not everybody is going to. We all have the ability, we all have the knowledge, but not everybody awakens to it in this lifetime or today. But if you guys are out there and you're inquisitive and you're like, I want to know more and have these experiences, seek out people like myself and like you who have the experiences already, because that's all it takes is finding a friend who's been there. And it's like, oh, oh, okay. Well, you survived. I guess I can be okay too.
Yeah. And I fully believe people are going to be sick of hearing me say this because I'm just saying it so much. But like, I fully believe that every single one of you can connect to your loved ones in spirit psychically, right? Whatever, intuitively, whatever words you use, you can connect to your loved one, whether you have this full blown awakening, whether it was like something that happened or something that's slowly over time, it doesn't matter. You can, like, it's your birthright to connect to your loved one in spirit. And so, like, you can do it. Just reach
I
out,
agree.
talking to people and working on things. And like, another thing that my friends always say to me is do the uncomfortable until it becomes comfortable. And I hate it because they always tell me that when I don't want to do something.
But that's, again, that explanation that different is uncomfortable because it's unfamiliar.
Yeah.
And as it becomes more familiar, then it tends to also become more comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And when that's part of the gift that I bring to people is I've been on my own journey of opening and awakening. So, if you ask me questions, Shay, of things that you've experienced, either I've experienced it or I know someone else who has, or I've had enough experiences of my own that your stuff isn't freaking me out.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's cool. I didn't do that. That's neat. I never heard of that one, but awesome.
Yeah. That's like exactly what happens when people talk to me about stuff. I'm like, wait, I want that to happen for me too. Like, how did you do that?
Yeah.
Usually it's how that goes if I haven't
Yeah.
tried. But so we do have, would you mind touching on anxiety a little bit? We had a comment about someone having a lot of anxiety after the death of their mom.
Okay. So think of anxiety can also be interpreted, sometimes anxiety is a mental construct. It's what you're thinking about, it's what you worry about, it's mental. But anxiety is not just a mental condition. And this is the piece that a lot of therapists and counselors don't touch on. Anxiety actually is energy that's moving through your body. It's either an excessive amount of energy that's moving through your body really, really rapidly and it's just like, and you don't even know what it is, where it is, and how to deal with it. Or it's energy that's getting stuck. And so there are a couple of things that you can do. The very primal, easiest, most simplistic, breath.
Mm-hmm.
So what I invite you to do is just focus on your breath. Some people want to do this eyes closed. You don't have to. And you are the witness, the observer of your breath. And just notice in your mind's eye that every time you take an inhalation, your chest and abdomen move out away from your spine. And on the exhalation, it moves back in. So you just see like a movie in your mind and you just focus on the breath. Not to change your breath, just to be the observer, watching that movement. And then on one of your exhales, allow your shoulders to drop away from your ears. I know we're short on time. Another really, really powerful technique is tapping.
Yes.
You can look up.
Whole video on tapping.
Good.
So if somebody wants to see it, I'll tag you. So comment, we've done a video on tapping because it is like the bomb.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Collarbone.
Yep.
This bone right here, sternum, the edge of your hand. Those are the key pieces, but people do this awesomely.
Yeah. Tapping is fantastic. I'm so glad you said that.
Because it moves the energy. Remember, energy is either stagnant or disorganized. Tapping helps move it through the meridians.
Yeah.
So breath work, relaxation, reminding yourself that you are not this moment in time.
Mm-hmm.
You are not this moment in time. This moment in time will pass. And this moment in time is only this moment. It's not the past that you've been thinking about, and it's not the future that you are still worrying about. Stay in this moment, and that's what the breath does for you. And it's awesome because you don't have to worry about, did I put it in my pocket? Is it in my bag? It's always with you.
Yeah, I love it. That is like the best advice. And it's like, how do I forget that when I need it though?
I
Like,
know. Well, it's reminders and practice. And if you can do it daily and you don't just wait until you absolutely need it, I'm to the point now where all I have to do is take that first cleansing breath and a long exhale, and my whole body goes, okay, here we go, relaxation, because it's learned. And
yeah,
I've got lots of articles on my website that have to do with dealing with anxiety and sensitives. My website, spiralwisdom.com or judylipson.com. Many ways to find me.
yeah. And I've got the links in the descriptions too.
Awesome. Thank you.
So if there's any more questions after this video, feel free, if you watch the replay, let us know your questions. We'll get back to you. And I think we're going to have to do another video. So I feel like there's a lot of topics that we could talk about.
I'm in.
I love it. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Judy.
Thanks, Sheaya, for the opportunity. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.